After securing a decisive victory over the Belgae Confederation at the Battle of the Axona, Julius Caesar's legions marched deeper into Gaul, driven by the ambition of total conquest. The legions were confident but battle-weary. They had experienced many campaigns, but they knew that ahead lay one of the fiercest adversaries they would face, the Nervii. Unlike other Gallic tribes, the Nervii did not negotiate, did not send emissaries to Rome, and had no interest in the Roman promise of protection. For centuries, the Nervii had defended their lands from invaders, preserving their fiercely independent way of life. Located deep in the forests and wetlands of northern Gaul, near the Sambre River, their homeland provided natural defences that suited their guerrilla warfare tactics. The Nervii had never succumbed to foreign invaders, and they did not intend to now. The Nervii were also unlike other tribes in another way. They had banned all luxury items, a conscious decision to reject the increasing Roman influence that had infiltrated many other Gallic societies. In Nervii culture, wealth was measured not in gold or foreign goods, but in strength, loyalty, and the honour of their warriors. This made them all the more dangerous. They saw the Romans as more than an enemy. They saw them as a threat to their very identity. Despite Caesar's victory at the Axona, the Nervii had remained ominously silent, refusing to engage directly in battle or negotiations. They had, however, been silently preparing, gathering allies and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Unbeknownst to Caesar, they had already forged alliances with the Atrebates and the Viromandui, swelling their numbers and pooling their warriors for a combined force that, in their minds, would be unstoppable. As the legions crossed into Nervii territory, the atmosphere became increasingly tense. Caesar, though seasoned in war, sensed that something was amiss. Scouts reported that the forests were unnervingly quiet. No traders, no animals, no signs of normal life. Caesar, known for his calculated risk-taking, ordered his troops to proceed with caution. The landscape around the Sambre River was a dangerous one for a marching army. The dense forests gave way to sudden clearings, and the river itself was flanked by steep banks and thick underbrush, perfect conditions for an ambush. But Caesar had no choice. He needed to engage the Nervii to secure the area, and, as always, the legions would need to adapt to the terrain. The Nervii, lying in wait for weeks, had prepared their ambush with meticulous care. Knowing the Roman army would follow the natural path along the Sambre, they had concealed their forces in the thick woods and tall grass surrounding the riverbanks. Their strategy was simple yet devastating. Strike the Romans when they were most vulnerable, mid-march and while setting up camp. Caesar's legions, unaware of the extent of the threat that lay ahead, began to construct their fortified camp along the river's edge. The Roman army had always prided itself on its efficient camp building. Every day, regardless of whether they would stay the night, the soldiers built a defensive structure, complete with trenches and ramparts, ensuring they could hold off any potential attacks. As the camp began to take shape, the Nervii saw their opportunity. From the dense cover of the forest, their war horns blasted through the air, and a massive wave of Gallic warriors poured out of the trees, rushing toward the unprepared Romans. It was a scene of chaos, as thousands of Nervii, Atrebates, and Viromandui warriors surged forward, their war cries echoing across the battlefield. The Nervii moved with terrifying speed and coordination. They knew the Roman army's strength lay in its disciplined formations, so they sought to break these lines before the Romans could organize themselves. They attacked from all sides, focusing their efforts on the sections of the army that had not yet fully entrenched themselves. Caesar, taken aback by the swiftness of the attack, immediately sprang into action. His first priority was to rally his scattered troops. From atop his horse, he rode through the ranks, shouting orders, his voice cutting through the din of battle. His veteran soldiers, recognizing the danger, quickly formed up into the defensive formations that had saved them in countless battles before. The Roman legions were nothing if not disciplined. Though the Nervii had the advantage of surprise, the Romans were not easily shaken. The soldiers on the front lines locked their shields together in the classic Roman testudo, a near impenetrable wall of shields that could absorb the force of even the fiercest assault. Behind this shield wall, the legionnaires thrust their gladi with deadly precision, cutting down any warrior who got too close. But despite their discipline, the Romans were struggling. The Nervii fought with a reckless ferocity, throwing themselves at the Roman lines with abandon. For every Nervii warrior that fell, another seemed to take their place. The Romans were outnumbered, and their defences were still incomplete. Seeing his men faltering, Caesar made a bold decision. He personally led a contingent of his cavalry to strike at the Nervii's flank. He knew that a direct confrontation would be disastrous, so instead he sought to disrupt the Nervii's coordination. As the Roman cavalry charged into the Nervii warriors, chaos erupted within the Gallic ranks. Caesar's manoeuvre, though risky, bought his infantry valuable time to regroup. As the battle raged on, the Roman legions gradually regained control. With their formations solidified, they began to push back against the Nervii assault. The Nervii, realizing that their chance to overwhelm the Romans had passed, fought with even greater desperation. They knew that if they failed here, their entire way of life would be in jeopardy. For hours the battle raged, neither side willing to give ground. The banks of the Sambre river ran red with blood as both Roman and Nervii warriors fell in droves. The ground, once soft from recent rains, became a quagmire of mud and blood, making movement difficult and adding to the chaos. In the heat of battle, Roman centurions barked orders to their soldiers, keeping their formations tight and methodical. The Nervii, by contrast, operated with less structure but far more emotional intensity, with small groups of warriors repeatedly charging the Roman lines, hoping to break their discipline. The Nervii's courage was unmatched, but the Romans' discipline and tactical superiority began to show. Slowly but surely, Caesar's legions pressed forward inch by bloody inch, forcing the Nervii back toward the river. Caesar himself remained in the thick of the battle, directing his forces with precision. His ability to remain calm and focused in the heat of battle was one of his greatest strengths as a commander, and it was on full display at the Sambre. Finally, as dusk began to fall, the battle reached its climax. The Nervii, exhausted and outnumbered, made one last desperate push against the Roman lines, but it was too late. The Roman legions, now fully entrenched and emboldened by their defensive positions, held firm. The Nervii's final assault was shattered against the unyielding Roman shields. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, the battle was over. The Nervii had been defeated, their forces decimated. Only a few survivors managed to escape into the forest, their once proud tribe now broken. For Caesar, the victory was bittersweet. The Nervii had fought with incredible bravery and skill, and he respected them as worthy adversaries. In his reports to Rome, he would later describe the Nervii as one of the fiercest tribes he had ever encountered. Their defeat, while necessary for the Roman conquest of Gaul, marked the end of a proud and noble people. As the Roman legions set up their camp for the night, the fires of the camp flickered in the darkness. Caesar, ever the strategist, began to plan his next move. The victory at the Sabis was a crucial one, but he knew that more battles lay ahead. The Gallic war was far from over, and while the Nervii had been defeated, other tribes would surely rise to take their place. But for now, the Roman legions could rest, knowing that they had once again proven their superiority on the battlefield. The Battle of the Sabis would go down in history as one of Caesar's greatest victories, a testament to his tactical genius and the indomitable spirit of his legions.